Hello and welcome to Flock and Fern's YouTube channel. We create videos on knitting techniques, projects and the occasional review. In this video I'm going to take you step by step through how to knit this super chunky Santa hat. The pattern is available at the link below and it's for sizes from Premi baby all the way up to Adult XXL. So you can make one for all the family. Okay, let's get knitting. To knit this Santa hat you will need some 9mm 40cm length circular knitting needles, some super chunky yarn, I've gone for red and an off-white or an ecru, some scissors, a pom-pom maker, various sizes depending on what size of hat you're knitting, a darning needle with a large eye that's big enough to fit the super chunky yarn in, and a stitch marker. Okay, so we're going to start the hat by casting on. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to knit the size 6 to 12 month baby hat. As I said, in the link below in the video description, you can see the pattern which has sizes from Premi baby all the way up to Adult XXL. But yeah, I'm going to do 6 to 12 months. So using the colour of the yarn that you want for the brim of your hat, which I'm going to use as this off-white, I'm going to start by creating a slip knot. I'm leaving a big tail because I'm going to use the long tail thumb method to cast on. So about a 60cm tail, and then get ready to do my slip knot. So I'm going to drape the yarn over my hand. So this bit that's at the palm of my hand is the ball end, at the back is the tail end. I'm going to take that tail end and I'm going to wrap it round my hand and cross it over at the palm. Turning my fingers in then to face me, I'm going to take the tail end and I'm going to pass it under the yarn that's going across my fingers and I'm going to pull it through. As I slide my fingers out, you can see that there's a little arch here. That's where I'm going to slide in my knitting needle and then I'm going to pull just gently on both the tail and the ball end of the yarn, and that's created my slip knot. This is also the very first stitch. So for the size 6 to 12 months, I'm going to cast on 35 stitches in total, so I'll need another 34 using the long tail method. So with my left hand now, I'm going to scoop up the tail end of the yarn, my thumb up in the air, I'm going to pass it behind, bring it to the front, and as the yarn crosses over at the base of my thumb, I'm going to tuck the knitting needle into that triangle shape there. Leaving my thumb in place, I'm going to use the ball end of the yarn to wrap it round the knitting needle. In between my thumb and the knitting needle, I'm going to pull that loop that's on my thumb up, over, and then off, and then pull on the tail end to secure. So we're just going to continue using the long tail method until we've got 35 stitches on there. So scooping the yarn up, thumb up, wrap it round, knitting needle goes into that triangle at the base of the thumb, wrap the ball end of the yarn round the knitting needle, in between my knitting needle and my thumb comes up, scoops over and off, and just repeat. And that's me casting on the last stitch, 35. So we've got a little tail left, that's perfectly fine. We're just going to ignore that now. And then we're going to take up the other needle on our circular needles. And we are going to join in the round to then knit the rest of the hat. This is when you're going to need your stitch marker. So I'm going to place that on the needle. And this is going to notify me when I'm getting to the end of the round. And it will just travel up the hat as we go along. So at the very first stitch, we are going to knit and then we're going to purl. And what we're going to do is work the whole way round in moss stitch. So going in to the front of that needle, that stitch, cross them over. Make sure you get the ball end of the yarn. And we're just going to knit straight in there. So by doing so, we've now closed that circle. And that is the kind of start of the formation of our hat. So the next stitch we're going to purl. So we're going to bring the working yarn to the front. I'm going to take my right needle into the front of the base of the stitch on my left needle. Wrap the yarn round, pull it down and out. And then yarn to the back. I'm going to knit into the next stitch. Yarn to the front. I'm going to purl into the next stitch and just repeat that knit one, purl one, all the way around. Okay, so we've got to the end of our first round of moss stitch. We can tell that from the stitch marker. So we're going to slide that stitch marker over and then we're ready to do the second round. Now, because this is moss stitch, we're going to now purl stitch on each knit. So we've got alternates. So we're starting round 2 with a purl and then a knit. And we're just going to continue in moss stitch like that for 8 rounds in total. And then we'll be ready to form the body of the hat. Okay, so we're on one last stitch to go of our 8 rounds of our brim in off-white. With this last stitch, I'm just going to purl it, move my stitch marker over. Now I'm going to be changing colours, so I'm going to move the ball end of the yarn to the back and I'm going to cut off from the ball end of the off-white, and then I'm going to join the red to form the body of the hat. Now the body of the hat I'm going to do in stocking stitch. So to start, I'm going to take my right needle, keep that tail end of the off-white to the back, and I'm going to slide it into that purl stitch at the back as if to knit. I've hooked over the red yarn, so just fold it over, leaving about a 10cm tail. And I'm going to hook that onto the needle, the right needle, and slide it forward and off as if to knit. And then I'm going to go into the second stitch knitwise. And I'm going to take both ends, so the tail and the ball end of that hooked on red yarn, wrap it round and knit both. And I'm going to repeat that 2 more times. And that will just secure that new colour in place. Then I'm going to drop the tail end and I'm going to continue in the red, the ball end of the yarn, and I'm going to knit every stitch in the round. When we get to the end of this round, we're going to do something slightly different because we're going to avoid what we call jogging, which is when you can see the colour change really obviously and it kind of jolts the work. So we're just going to do something to avoid that from happening at the end of this round. So we've got a more seamless join of the colours. Okay, so now we have 1 stitch left. So we're just going to knit that last stitch of the off-white and of the round as normal. We can just pull the tail ends to secure if needed. Slide that stitch marker over. But with this first stitch of the second round, we're going to slip it purlwise. So to do that, I'm going to take the tip of my right needle. I'm going to go into that stitch purlwise. And I'm just going to pass it over onto the right needle. I'm then going to go into the stitch on the left and just knit it like normal. And again, knit all the way around. And now you might think with stocking stitch, surely this should be alternate knit purl with each row. But because we're knitting in the round, it means that every stitch is a knit stitch. Now, as we get to the end of this round, and to continue knitting, slide that stitch marker across. And now that knit stitch that we slipped in the last round, we are going to knit through the back loop. So taking the right needle, we're going to put it into the back of that knit stitch that we've slipped. And then I'm going to wrap the working yarn round in between and just knit it that way. So knitted through the back loop and slide it off. And then we will just continue knitting all the way round for round 3. Then we just continue working on the body of the hat until we've done 12 rounds in total. And then we'll start to shape the top of the hat. Okay, so we're now coming up to the end of round 12 of the body of the hat. Slide that marker across. So now we're going to start to decrease and shape the top of the hat so it gets that kind of iconic Santa hat shape. So what we're going to do is knit 6 and then knit 2 together to start that decrease. So 6, and then go into the 2 together. So I'm going to go into that second stitch on the left needle and also the first stitch on the left needle, like so, and just knit those 2 together. And then I'm going to knit 6. And I'm going to knit those 2 together. Knit 6. And then knit those 2 together. And knit 6. Knit those 2 together. And then we're going to knit 1 and then knit 2 together at the end of the round. And then we're going to slide that marker across. And then on the next round, we're just going to knit into every stitch, including those decreased stitches. Okay, at the end there, we're going to slide that marker across again. And now we're on to another decreasing round. We're going to knit 5 and then knit 2 together. Two together, and then 5, until you get to the last 2 stitches and you're just going to knit those 2. Knit 2. Pass the marker over, and then on the next round you're just going to knit into every stitch. Okay, and on the next round we're going to decrease again, so we're going to knit 4 and then knit 2 together and repeat that until you get to the last 2 stitches, and we're just going to knit those 2. So, slide that over, and then on the next round we're going to knit into every stitch. If you're enjoying this video, it would be really great if you could hit subscribe and the little bell icon. It won't cost you anything, but what it will do is give you a notification every time we post something new, and it will really help to support the channel. So thank you for that. All right, next decrease round. So we're going to knit 3 and then 2 together, and we're going to repeat that again until we get to the last 2 stitches, and we're just going to knit them again. And then next round we're going to knit every stitch. Okay, and now we're going to knit 2 and then knit 2 together, and again repeat that until we get to the last 2 stitches of the round and knit those 2. Now as we're decreasing in each round and the number of stitches is a lot less on the needles, you'll find that you do have to start feeding them round the cable that's holding the circular needles together. And that's why we're using a 40 centimetre length circular knit needle. If you use longer ones, it's fine, it's just a lot more fiddlier. And then starting this new round, again, we're just going to knit into every stitch. And slide that marker over, and now we're going to be knitting one and then knitting two together. And we're going to repeat that again all the way around until the last two stitches. And then we're just going to knit those two. And next round, we're just going to knit into every stitch again. Right, now in the next round, we're going to decrease again, but we're going to knit two together all the way around the round. Two together, and again, two together. Two together. And the last two, they're being knitted together as well. Now that will leave you with 5 stitches on the needles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we're going to do is just knit into each stitch. And this is our very last round. There we are. Right, I'm going to take the stitch marker off. I'm going to let that stitch go to the back there on the needle. So they're all on one, all the stitches are on one needle. I'm going to cut the working end of the yarn, leaving about a 10 centimetre tail. And taking my darning needle, I'm going to feed that tail through. And then I'm going to slide each of these 5 stitches off and onto my darning needle, but this ways. So if we just pass them all the way down, so that the working end, the tail end is at one end and the first is at the other. And we're just going to slide the darning needle into each of those stitches. And I'm just going to pull that through and thread through to secure. Okay. So now we've pulled those 5 stitches through. I'm going to take the darning needle and put it into the very top center of those stitches and push it through to the inside, and turning the hat in on itself. I'm going to just thread that and secure into place like so. Now I'm going to leave this tail in place for the minute because I'm going to attach a pom-pom to the top, but you can see we've got that iconic Santa hat shape there, and it's ready for its little pom-pom. So using the off-white yarn again to match the brim and the pom-pom maker, I'm going to make a pom-pom. As I said, the size of your pom-pom depends on the size of the hat that you're knitting. If you need to see how to use a pom-pom maker, then check out this video that's on the screen now. Okay, so I've got my pom-pom, I've got my darning needle, and I've got my hat. My pom-pom, I've left these 2 tails on to help with attaching it to the hat. So I'm going to take both those tails and thread them through the eye of the darning needle. I'm going to then take my darning needle and put it into the top center of the hat and thread that through. Again, turning the hat in on itself, you'll find the tail that we left from when we finished the knitting of the hat. And what I'm going to do is just tie 2 knots of those, the off-white, this is the pom-pom tail, to the hat tail. 1 and 2, using both the tails if they're long enough. There we go. Now I'm going to drop the shorter of the tails of the off-white, the pom-pom tail. Taking the longer one, still threaded through the darning needle, I'm going to push it back from the inside of the hat through the pom-pom. There we go. Make sure to tug that so it's really secure. And push that darning needle back in through the pom-pom and into the top of the hat. Again. Turn it in on itself. Pull through. And I'm going to tie it off to the tail of the hat. Cast off again. 2 more knots. Nice and secure. Okay, that's been done with those tails. So I'm now just going to trim them. And that's them finished with. Put the hat the right way around. Let's have a look. And then we could just trim the pom-pom to shape it. So I'll do that now. So just going to take the scissors again and just trim off any of the little like irregularities or make it more spherical all the way around. And then we are going to weave in our tail ends from our brim and our colour change. So cast on tail, colour change tails. We're going to take it up the darning needle. We're just going to weave those through. So going in to a couple of stitches, try and work it diagonally. Like so, and then that can be trimmed off now. And then the same for the colour change. Just going to catch that first one. Thread through just a couple of stitches, maybe one more, and then trim that tail. And then the last one. Feed this red yarn up, and then again trim that off. Turn it the right way around, and there you have it. Hand knitted, super chunky Santa. And as I said, the sizes in the pattern are, you can make one for all the family. They knit up pretty quick because they're super chunky, and they're really nice, cozy, and help to spread a bit of festive cheer. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, as I mentioned. It just really helps with the channel. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification when we post our next video. So I hope you enjoyed that. And most of all, happy knitting.